Hey guys, welcome to this mini lesson on narrators. This is part of a series on literary devices. So if there are other literary devices that you want to know more about, make sure you check out the other videos in the series. In this lesson, we are learning to understand what narrators are and how and why authors vary the voice of their narrators. In the first video of this series, we broke down literary devices into two categories, elements and techniques. So, narrators are a literary element, which means they're kind of fundamental to storytelling. Almost every story has a narrator in it. Let's just quickly talk about the difference between a narrator and an author. So an author, sure, is the person that writes the story, but that does not mean that they are the person that tells the story. In fact, most authors will create a character who then is the person telling the story. I'm going to use an example to try and help you wrap your head around this. So think about Huckleberry Finn. He is a character in Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Huckleberry Finn is a fictional character, Mark Twain, real person. However, Mark Twain's not the one telling the story, although he wrote it, but he wrote it from the perspective of Huckleberry Finn. So Huckleberry Finn is a young boy. He is socially outcast in the community that he's in, like he's poor and uneducated, and so the language that he uses is obviously going to be very different than the language of Mark Twain, who is a real-world author, writer, journalist, etc., who obviously uses language really, really well. So Huck Finn, his use of language is really poor. He makes lots of grammatical mistakes, and he doesn't string his sentences together very well. Mark Twain, on the other hand, probably didn't speak like that. But Mark Twain has deliberately chosen to write his book using that poor language because he wants it to be believable that it's being told by this kid, Huck Finn. At this point, we're going to deviate from talking about Huck Finn and start talking about the different types of narration. But to do that, we are going to come back to Huck Finn very shortly. So there are 4 different types of narrator. They include first, second, third, limited, and third, omniscient. It's okay if you don't get those yet. We're going to break them down now. So first person narration is when the story is told from the perspective of a character within the story. An easy way to identify first person narration is through the use of words like I, me, and my when they occur outside of direct speech. So if a character is talking, that's not a great place to try and determine what kind of narration you're getting, because they could be saying anything. But at the main body of the story and the way it's being told, have a look and see, are they using words like I, me, and my? Well, that lets you know it's being narrated from one person's perspective and their own individual first person perspective. The next type is second person narration, but that's actually pretty uncommon. But you might have read a Choose Your Own Adventure book. This is a great example of second person narration. So it actually puts you, the reader, in the center of the story. You're the main character. And so to do that, it uses words like you, your, and yours. So those are second person words. Again, make sure that those are outside of direct speech, because any character could use the word you when they're speaking aloud. But if the main body of the text is using that language, you, your, and yours, then you know that you are the character in the story, and so that's second person narration. Third person narration is broken down into 2 types, limited and omniscient. But we'll just start with saying what third person narration is in general. So if first is from my perspective and it's using words like I, me, and my, and you is from your perspective, and so it uses words like you, your, and yours, then third is from somebody else's perspective, and so it uses words like they, their, and theirs. So in third person narration, you will find that we are being told about what different characters are doing, but we're not going to get words like I, me, and my, or you and your in the main body of the text. Let's have a look at third person limited narration now. So limited narrators are actually confined to the experience or the experiences of one character within the story. So the narrator knows everything that this character knows, and the narrator experiences everything that this character, or has access to all of the experiences that this character has. It knows what they see, it knows what they smell, it knows what they think, it knows what they feel. The reason we call it limited is because this type of narrator is limited to just the perspective of one person within the story. However, third-person narrators aren't always so limited. So we also get third-person omniscient narrators. And this is a narrator that knows everything about the world in which the story unfolds, or at least they know everything relevant to that particular story. So at any time they can tell you what particular characters are thinking or feeling. They're not limited to just that one character. They can tell you about all the characters in the book, what they are doing, thinking, feeling, seeing, etc. All right, we're going to check your understanding by having a look at some examples. So hopefully if you don't get it yet, when we look at these examples, you will. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read out some narration from some fairly well-known books, and I'll give you just a couple of seconds to think about it, see if you can figure out whether it's first, second, third limited, or third omniscient, and then I'll explain which type of narration it is and how I knew it was that type of narration. So here's our first example. My babysitters handled the suspense better than I did. So it's this first, second, third limited, third omniscient. I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about it. It is first person. So the narrator, Bella Swan, is using words like my and I to tell the story, so the correct answer is first. All right, here's our second example. Thomas couldn't see a single thing. He was blind. He took small breaths through his nose. His pumping heart needed oxygen desperately. Could it hear him, smell him? A fear he had never known filled him to the point of insanity. Still nothing. No movement, no light, no sound. The anticipation of trying to guess its next move was killing Thomas. So what do you think? Is that first, second, third limited, or third omniscient? Okay, so it is a third person limited account, because whilst we're being told about what Thomas is experiencing, the language used is he, his, him, so we know it's third person, but the story is limited to Thomas's experiences. We only know what he feels and what he sees. We're not getting any information about what is happening outside of what he knows. Alright, here's the last one. Have a read, see what you think. The other dwarves quite agreed when they got the message. They all thought their own shares in the treasure would suffer seriously if the wood elves claimed part of it, and they all trusted Bilbo. Bilbo, however, did not feel nearly so hopeful as they did. Okay, so the language here is third person as indicated by the word they. This time, however, we're told about what the dwarves are thinking as well as what Bilbo is thinking. So this means our narrator is omniscient. It knows what the dwarves are thinking, it knows what Bilbo's thinking, it seems to know what lots of the characters or all of the characters are thinking. Therefore they're omniscient. Omniscient means all-knowing. So now that we've got an understanding of the basics of narration, let's move on to some of the other interesting ways that authors use narrators. Firstly, some books have multiple narrators, and that means the story is told by more than one person. And that gives the author the opportunity to explore multiple perspectives. So if you think about the book Wonder, that begins being told from the perspective of the main character, Augie, but then it moves to the perspectives of various others within his community. So Augie is actually a very different child, and the book deals really heavily with that theme of difference. Having a variety of narrators in this story means that we can experience how a variety of people respond to Augie's difference, and the difference knowing him makes to each of them. So I said the word difference a lot then, because not only is Augie different, but we're getting the different perspectives of how people respond to his difference. So it makes for a really thorough examination of that theme of difference. Another interesting way that authors use narration is sometimes they'll have an unreliable narrator, and these are narrators that we, the audience, can't actually trust. So their version of the story might have some or a lot of untruth in it. They're telling a flawed version of events. They might be deliberately trying to deceive us, or maybe they don't want us to know some of the details, so they're deliberately missing out some stuff, or they could even be insane, and so their understanding of what's happening may be incorrect. For example, we're going to look at Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart, which is a short story, and it's narrated by someone who's just murdered an old man. But this guy who's murdered the old man can still hear the old man's heart beating even after the old man is dead. So that means he's hallucinating, and we probably can't really trust his version of events. And we can't even trust really anything that he's saying. If he's so insane it's driven him to the point of murdering somebody, he may not be a real trustworthy, reliable source. So when he tells us stuff like he's not insane, and he tells us that he loves the old man that he just killed, we don't believe him. Another type of unreliable narrator is the naive narrator. So naive narrators are often young and don't properly understand the significance of the story unfolding around them. If you've read Room, you'll know that the main character is a 5-year-old boy. His name is Jack, and he is not aware that he's a prisoner, and he's not aware that his mother is a rape victim. However, as we get through the story, we start to realise that this is his reality, even though he doesn't actually fully understand or know that himself. All these different variations on narrators help to make stories more interesting. They connect us as readers to the stories in lots of different ways. So some connect us to stories really intimately and we get to know particular characters really, really well. But others allow for greater depth and exploration of themes. And some require us to determine what is really happening. All of those things obviously help to create a unique and interesting experience for the reader. Hopefully you now have a good understanding of narrators. To consolidate your learning, make sure you download the PDFs from the description below. You can also check out the other videos in this series, and don't forget to head over to our rival channel, Alan Robbo's Amazing Maths and Science channel, for all things maths and science. Thank you for listening. We hope to see you back soon.